So we just do it in Tibetan. Sangye Chedan Sogi Chonam La Chanchu Baru Dani Kyapsuchi Dagi Chajingi Pesonaki Rola Penche Sangye Drupa Sho Sangye Chedan Sogi Chonam La Chanchu Baru Dani Kyapsuchi Dagi Chajingi Pesonaki Rola Penche Sangye Rupa Sho Sangye Chedan Sogi Chonam La Chanchu Badu Dani Kyapsuchi Dagi Chenyingi Sonam Ki Dola Penje Sangye Rupa Sho. So we take refuge to distinguish ourselves from followers of non-Buddhist paths. And the first two lines and then the second two lines, we generate bodhicitta to distinguish ourselves from followers of lower Buddhist paths, non-Mahayana paths. So we take refuge because we understand and fear the suffering of cyclic existence and recognize that the Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha are the way out of the suffering of cyclic existence. And we generate bodhicitta, the determination to reach enlightenment for the sake of all sentient beings, because we realize we're not the only ones in suffering. And until all sentient beings are free from suffering and enlightened, we can't relax. So now let's just get a little centered, just meditate on the breath for 2 or 3 minutes. So sit in comfortable meditation posture, then find your breath where it goes out, comes in through your nostrils, and focus all your attention at that point. And try to keep it there for as long as you can. So again, let's just reaffirm our intention. I think the purpose of my life is to lead all sentient beings from suffering to enlightenment. In order to do that, first I have to reach enlightenment myself. And my reaching enlightenment depends on my following and completing the path to enlightenment. And the root of the path, the heart of the path, the only way I can reach enlightenment by following the path is by having a spiritual teacher who can lead me on the path to enlightenment. Therefore, in order to reach enlightenment, for the sake of all sentient beings, I'm going to study these teachings on spiritual teacher. So sometimes when we recite these prayers, we're too focused on the words. We we're not able to remember the meaning or feel the meaning of the words. So, but that comes with studying the teachings on refuge and bodhicitta, in particular when talking about that prayer. So the more we study and meditate on refuge, the more we study and meditate on bodhicitta, the more meaning and more feeling that short prayer will have for us. So so this is the second of 5 or 6 sessions, I think. So last week I mentioned this is the main book on Guru devotion, but it's quite extensive. So we have that as a reference. And as I mentioned, there's a couple of chapters by His Holiness in this book, The Foundation of Buddhist Practice by His Holiness and Thupten Chodron. So since that's a little more compact, maybe we'll use that as the basis. But there's also this book, Lama Tsongkhapa's commentary on the 50 verses of Guru devotion, which is essentially a text written, I'm not sure exactly when it was written, it's some doubt. Ashvaghosha is supposed to have lived a couple of thousand years ago. Ashvaghosha, who's supposed to have written this text. So that's really how to follow a tantric guru, how to follow a Vajramaster, 50 verses. And we also sent out a link, I think, to a couple of Geshe Dage's commentaries. So you have these books, these references have been sent out, I think, by Mary. Then there's this book, Illuminating the Path to Enlightenment by His Holiness Dalai Lama, His Holiness commentary on Atisha's Lamp for the Path and Lama Tsongkhapa's Lines of Experience. So this is a really excellent book. And there's a nice section on Guru devotion, on relying on a spiritual teacher in here as well. So it's a big topic, it's an important topic, and there's a lot of books deal with it, of course. There's the section in here, in Liberation in the Palm of Your Hand, and that approaches the preliminary practices from the point, in the context of Guru devotion too, cleaning the room and setting up the altar and all these 6 preparatory practices. They're all done in relation to meditating on Guru devotion. And that's based on Lama Tsongkhapa's teachings on Guru devotion. Lama Tsongkhapa is the one who termed Guru devotion as the root of the path. And just that term, root of the path, conveys how crucial this practice is if we're seriously trying to make progress on the path to enlightenment. You know, we can't make serious progress if we don't have proper teacher. So last week we also looked at why we need a guru, why we need a teacher, because if we need teachers for worldly activities like learning a musical instrument or learning to read or learning differential calculus or whatever, we need a teacher. So following the spiritual path is much more difficult than learning any of these worldly skills. So it's that much more important to have a spiritual teacher if we're trying to follow the spiritual path. And we also talked a little bit about how to find a spiritual teacher. I think I was recommending dropping everything and going to Nepal and India for a few years. Not always possible, but ideal, I would say. But things are quite different today from how they were 50 years ago when some of us first got into this Tibetan Buddhist trip. So at that time there were virtually no centers in the West and very few books, and it was you really had to be in the East. I think now there's so many Dharma centers in the West and so many qualified teachers here in the West. Especially in the FPMT, we have these highly qualified geshis that Rinpoche, Lama Zopa Rinpoche sends to various centers. So we're very lucky in that. You have a great center down there, and you have Geshe Sherab. He's there half the year, is he? And Don Hendrik is very learned Western teacher. So you're very fortunate to have teachers like that. And they really come to us, these teachers. We have had a couple of very highly qualified geshis here in Boston too, at Kurukulla Center. And these centers and these teachers are coming to us through the vision and kindness of Lama Yeshe and Lama Zopa Rinpoche. So we're very lucky at this time. So if you feel a strong connection to the lamas that come to your center, and you feel that they could be the right teacher for you, then that's very fortunate. Otherwise, you have to keep looking. So when we're looking for a teacher, what are the qualities that we're looking for? First of all, how does one become a spiritual teacher? Generally, most of the teachers that we've received teachings on in the FPMT earlier, a lot of these were learned teachers. So most of them have come through the monastic system in our tradition. And a lot of the teachers we were able to study with earlier were some of the great teachers from Tibet, like His Holiness. Of course, we still have His Holiness. So there was Ling Rinpoche and His Holiness Trichung Rinpoche, His Holiness's two tutors. So they were incarnate lamas, and who came through the traditional system. Ling Rinpoche came from Drepung Monastery. His Holiness Trichung Rinpoche came from Ganden Monastery. Our teachers, Lama Yeshe, Lama Zopa from Sera. So these are the three great monastic institutions, monastic universities that were situated in or around Lhasa. And then when the Tibetan Lamas went into exile in 59, they tried to reconstitute their monastic schedule and their studies in the refugee camp in Buxa in West Bengal, northeast India. And then after 8 or 10 years there, they were given land by the Indian government in southern India. So they all moved down there and re-established the great monasteries there. So they study the traditional Geshe studies, which can take 15, 20, 25 years, depending on how well developed your mind is when you start. And so in the monasteries, the general system is that you study and you become a Geshe. You get your Geshe degree, and then you take on your own students in the monastery. And you nurture them like you were nurtured by your teachers, and then they become Geshes, not all of them. But so it was a relatively closed system. Some of the Geshes who, when they completed their studies, went off into the mountains to meditate. They didn't follow the regular system, but a lot of other Geshes who were great scholars, they decided to stay in the monastery and teach the younger monks. In Tibet, before that, in the early days, 1,000 years ago or so, before those monastic systems were established or well developed, they would study with initially they studied with teachers who came from India, and then the qualified Tibetan teachers developed, and then they would go off and meditate, and maybe some lamas would just meditate and not have any students. They would remain in seclusion until they passed away, just trying to reach enlightenment as quickly as possible. Others attracted a certain number of disciples, and so in Tibet, over the centuries, as these lamas studied and practiced and started teaching, some of them became well-known teachers and gathered many, many students, and others remained relatively unknown with just a few students. But the ones who were the most learned finished up having whole monasteries develop around them, or even major schools of Tibetan Buddhism. So, the first teachers to come to India were the first teachers to come to Tibet from India were certainly the most influential ones were Padmasambhava and Santarakshita, who came in the 8th century, invited by the third Dharma king, Trisong Detsen. And they established the first monastery, Samyeling, in southern Tibet. And Santarakshita was the great abbot, he was known as, and he ordained the first Tibetan monks. And Padmasambhava was a great tantric yogi, and he went around the country sort of doing pujas and practices to dispel hindrances to the spread of Dharma. So the school that developed around them, from them, became known as the Nyingma school, or the ancient order. That was the first main school to develop. And then over the years, the Mapa, the translator, he used to go to India to study with Naropa, the great scholar yogi Naropa, who in turn was a disciple of the great yogi Tilopa. And Mapa's main disciple was Milarepa, the great yogi who meditated and attained enlightenment in that lifetime. And then he had disciples, Gampopa, the doctor, and another one called Rechungpa. So as the Kagyu school developed through that lineage, from Talopa to Naropa to Mapa to Milarepa, and through Gampopa, who wrote the Lamrim text, the Kagyu Lamrim text, the Jewel Ornament of Liberation, and Rechungpa. So that through those great teachers, great powerful teachers who attracted many disciples, from them this whole Kagyu tradition developed, which has flourished down to the present day. And then also in Sakya, in another part of southern Tibet, there was a great lineage of teachers arose, and there were 5 main Sakya teachers, and so the Sakya tradition arose around those teachers, and that also flourished and exists very strongly today. And then a couple of hundred years later, Lama Tsongkhapa came along. Well, before that, Atisha was invited to Tibet around the beginning of the 11th century, and after he gave teachings, and he introduced the Lamrim teachings, and his main disciple was his interpreter, Dromtomba, and from them developed the Kadampa school of Tibetan Buddhism. And that sort of a couple of hundred years later, that morphed into the Gelug school, when Lama Tsongkhapa sort of developed that tradition. And the Gelug school, as it's now known, which was founded by Lama Tsongkhapa, was called they were called the New Kadampas, because they developed this tradition of Kadampa Geshis and this ascetic practice and the mind transformation teachings. And they established their main monastery at a place called Retting in a little bit northeast from Lhasa. And it wasn't a huge monastery like Seragund and Drepung. And in fact, there were 3 other major Gelug monasteries developed. There was Tashilumpo in Shigatse, which was the seat of the Panchen Lama, the second highest Lama in Tibet. And then in eastern Tibet, in Amdo, there was Labrang and Kumbum, the 2 monasteries in northeastern Tibet. And then there was another large monastery called Dagi in eastern Tibet. So these monasteries developed around important and charismatic teachers. And these teachers developed through study and practice, and presumably being quite advanced practitioners in their previous lives as well, so that they had. And in the meantime, these are the main schools that developed and have come down to the present day, mainly these 4 ones, Nyingma, Kagyu, Sakya, and Gelug. But there are a lot of other smaller traditions developed, but they didn't have staying power, I guess. You know, maybe when the teacher passed away, the teacher didn't have really realized disciples who could carry the tradition on, or maybe there were 1 or 2, and maybe it fizzled out after 100 years or a couple of 100 years. So there were a lot of these smaller traditions also developed. But we have the 4 main ones, and the way these teachers became teachers is through study and meditation. So we had these teachers who were the yogis who went off and meditated in caves and gave these kind of teachings from their experience. And we also had in the monasteries the geshis, who became sort of like professors, and maybe they didn't do a lot of meditation, or maybe they didn't go off in the mountains and do retreats, or maybe they did for a while and then came back to teach. Lama Yeshe always called himself a Tibetan hippie, because he dropped out. He always thought he was a dropout from the system. Because he didn't, he saw his role as bringing the Dharma to the West as quite different from the traditional role that he would have been expected to adopt had he completed his Geshe studies. So he never completed his studies and he never did the exam. But later on, after a number of years, he was recognized as being highly qualified, and he was given sort of an honorary Geshe degree, whether he liked it or not. There's a story that he didn't like the sound of Geshe Yeshe, but I'm not sure. I never heard that from him anyway, but it's in the book, Big Love. I don't know, I think Geshe Yeshe has a certain ring to it. So, you know, it's very different being a spiritual teacher from being like a school teacher or a university professor, and studying with teachers, with these spiritual teachers is different. You know, when you go to university, you get the teacher you're given. You don't have a choice. You want to study chemistry, you go, you know, they have these lecturers in chemistry, or you want to study, you know, law, you go to law school and they have the professors there that they have. And those people, you know, studied and decided to become academics, and that's their career. But, and their job is to teach you the facts and to examine you on the facts and to pass or fail you on your knowledge of the facts. They're not really, generally you don't have a personal relationship with, you know, a university professor or with your school teacher. I'm not supposed to anyway. So, you know, and also it's a job for these people, and they get paid, and they live a normal life on the salary, and then when you graduate, you leave them behind. So spiritual teachers are a different relationship. It's like a lifelong commitment, lifelong relationship from both sides, from the teacher's side and from the student's side. So, and you know, a spiritual teacher doesn't get paid a salary. And when the students make offerings, it's not to it's not paying the teacher for the teachings or for looking after you. It's to create merit. That's why we make the offerings. And you know, while some, you know, when Lama Yeshe started these centers and started sending geshes to the West, you know, there were all these geshes who nice way to put this, hung around Lama Yeshe being nice to him, hoping that he would send them to the West, you know. And, you know, and a lot of some teachers wanted to go to the West because it's a much better life than living in India, and a more comfortable life. And, you know, they could get disciples. And a lot of these lamas, especially the younger ones, especially the so-called tulkus or the Rinpoches, they came to the West and then they disrobed and they got married and or had girlfriends and kind of dropped out that way too. So, and then there were some teachers some Tibetan lamas who came to the West, and not sure what their motivation is or was, but they got involved, you know, in there were sex scandals with getting involved with their students. So so that kind of thing happened. So so how do we know what are the qualifications that we look for in a teacher? So there are a number of ways of looking at this. first of all, we have these three well, anyway, we know, all the Buddha's teachings can be subsumed under these two yanas, or these two vehicles, these two spiritual vehicles that take us from where we are to where we want to go. So we talk about the Hinayana, the lesser vehicle, and the Mahayana, the great vehicle. So in this book, A Tibetan Tradition of Mental Development, Geshe Ngawandage, so he was the first teacher that His Holiness, so His Holiness set up the Tibetan Library, the Library of Tibetan Works and Archives in Dharamsala in about 68, 69, and Geshe Ngawandage, who's a Serije Lama from the same monastery as Lama Yeshe, Lama Zopa Rinpoche, he was the first teacher, and so a lot of these well-known translators now, he was one of their first teachers, Geshe Ngawandage. So, Alex Berzin and Alan Wallace and Stephen Batchelor, Glenn Mullen, Brian Beresford, a lot of these guys who became well-known, who are well-known translators, first studied with Geshe Dage. And this was probably the first Lamrim book, and this was based on Geshe's teachings on Geshe-la's teachings on liberation in the palm of your hand. I mentioned Gampopa's Jewel Ornament of Liberation, Kagyu Lamrim. There was the first translation of that was available was by a guy called Herbert Gunter. So if you ever read any of his books, and some of his other books were available in English, if you got a book by Herbert Gunter, the second book you had to buy was a dictionary, because he used all these fancy words that you'd never heard of. And his translation of the Jewel Ornament of Liberation was a little hard to get through because of all his fancy terminology. But now there's there's a new translation available, which is much easier, published by Snowline. But so also there's some complaint that about using these terms. Hang on. I just got this book, but I haven't read it yet, or haven't looked at it yet. It's called Superiority Conceit in Buddhist Traditions. So some people feel, maybe rightly, that the terms Hinayana and Mahayana aren't the best terms, even though they're actually what they were called and how they're translated in Tibetan, Hinayana and Mahayana. But some people feel that Hinayana is a pejorative term. It's kind of putting it down. But all the lamas, Lama Yeshe, always emphasize, and Geshe Dage and many others, they emphasize that it's not a sort of calling that collection of Buddha's teachings Hinayana, lesser vehicle, as opposed to greater vehicle. It does sound like a bit of a put down, but Geshe Dage here in this book, he explains 6 reasons why Mahayana is great. He says the aim is great because it's for the benefit of all sentient beings. The purpose is great, for it leads to omniscient state. The effort is great. The ultimate goal is great because it is Buddhahood rather than mere freedom from samsara. The concern is great as it is for all sentient beings, and the enthusiasm is great as the practice is not regarded as a hardship. So it's called great, and it's compared to the Hinayana, or the lesser vehicle. So he just made those points. Anyway, that's why I'm mentioning this. So we have these 2 divisions of the Buddha's teachings: Hinayana, the lesser vehicle, and it is lesser because the goal is individual liberation. So right there, it's called individual liberation. It's just one. The practitioner gets liberated from beginningless sufferings of samsara, but everybody else gets left behind. In the Mahayana, it's great because all sentient beings go to enlightenment. So enlightenment is a much higher, greater goal than individual liberation or nirvana. But so within the Hinayana, so-called, there are these 2 divisions. There's the Shravakayana, or the hearer vehicle, and the Pratyeka Buddhayana, or the solitary realizer vehicle. So the hearer vehicle, they're called hearers because they listen to the teachings from the Buddha or from their teacher, and they're usually monks or nuns, and then they go and practice them. And their main practice is keeping their vows purely, and practicing meditation on the basis of keeping pure vows, and trying to realize the ultimate nature of their own mind and attain individual liberation through transcending their delusions and karma. So the Shravakayanas are those who listen to the teachings, who study with their teacher, and then go and practice and gain various accomplishments through their practice. The Pratyeka Buddhayana, they are solitary practitioners who would go off into the mountains or into the forest and meditate, having received many teachings in previous lives and not really needing a physical teacher in this life. So in terms of the spiritual teacher, for the Hinayana, there's one type of teacher for that, and it's mainly talking about the Shravaka Yana, or the hearers. Hearer meaning listener, hearer, not hero. Hearer, hearer, one who hears. Then in the Mahayana, there are 2 divisions. There's the Mahayana Sutra vehicle, which is the gradual path to enlightenment. And there's the Vajrayana vehicle, which is the quick path to enlightenment. So there are 2 different kinds of spiritual teacher for those 2 Mahayana paths. For the Hinayana, even though there are these 2 divisions into Shravakayana and Pratyeka Buddhayana, we only talk about one type of teacher. So Lama Zopa once explained this difference between these 3 teachers as in the Hinayana, the main practice is keeping the precepts purely, and you may have well, I'll talk about this in a minute, but there are, maybe I'll talk about it now. So His Holiness says, when looking for the qualities of a spiritual master, so according to the three types of spiritual teacher, that'll be the Hinayana, the Mahayana Sutra, and the Mahayana Tantric teacher. There are three sets of qualities to look for. So the qualities of a suitable Vinaya teacher. So Vinaya, as you know, is the practice of discipline, mainly monastic discipline. So when we can also divide the Buddha's teachings into these three baskets or three collections of teachings: the Vinaya, which are the teachings on discipline, mainly monastic discipline, and the Sutra basket, or Sutra Pitaka, which is a collection of the Buddha's teachings on meditation and concentration, and the Abhidharma Pitaka, which is the teachings on wisdom, Buddhist metaphysics. So there are these three. So Vinaya teacher. So the qualities of a suitable Vinaya teacher. So this is then the Hinayana: keeping pure ethical conduct, having knowledge of what to practice and abandon on the path, as well as of Vinaya rituals and procedures. So there are a lot of rules for monks and nuns living in monastic situations. There are the vows that they've taken. So there are 36 vows of a novice monk or nun. There are 253 vows for a fully ordained monk, and 364 vows of a fully ordained nun. So in addition to these vowed rules of conduct that the monks and nuns take, there are also the monastic rules, what time you get up, whether you have to come to puja, who does the cooking, all the different jobs people have around the monastery, things like that. So keeping pure ethical conduct, having knowledge of what to practice and abandon, having compassion for the sick, having disciples who are gentle, kind, and wise. So, that's one of the things we look for when we're assessing a teacher. We look at the teacher's qualities, but we also look, because ultimately we're aspiring to become like the teacher. So, it'd be funny if we didn't like what the teacher was, but we're still inspiring to become like that. So one thing is to see what the qualities of the teacher are, and the other is to see what qualities the teacher's disciples have, because on our way to becoming like the teacher, probably we're going to become like the disciples first. So we want to check them out. Disciples who are gentle, kind, and wise. Then also the teacher should provide their monastic disciples with requisites for living and Dharma teachings. So, when you go to university, your professor isn't responsible for your food and clothing and shelter and that, but your Dharma teacher is, in the monastery especially. And then being able to teach a Dharma topic at the right time to a disciple capable of benefiting from it. So again, a spiritual teacher will tailor the teachings according to the need of the disciple or disciples in front of him. Whereas a professor has a preordained syllabus that they have to get through in the semester, and they just come in and they lecture on that topic, and the next day on the next topic, and so on and so forth. So it's quite different. So also here in this book, there. So I'm, you know, I think I described this series last time, but this is volume 2 of the Library of Wisdom and Compassion that Wisdom are putting out. So far there are 5 volumes out already, and there are going to be 10 or 11, depending on whether there are 1 or 2 volumes on Tantra at the end. So just an amazing set of books that are coming. So they're calling the Hinayana, or the lesser vehicle, the fundamental vehicle. So they're talking about the fundamental vehicle, the universal vehicle, and I forget what they call Vajrayana. We'll get to it in a minute. So the fundamental vehicle. So those are the 6 qualities that a fundamental vehicle teacher should have, but in short, should have the following 3 qualities. So summarized, this person is worthy of respect because he or she is self-disciplined and has refined behavior as a result of keeping precepts purely and serious Dharma practice. Also, this person is willing to help the disciples whenever required. So these are qualities we're looking for in a fundamental vehicle teacher. He or she has stable ethical conduct. For monastics, this means the person has been fully ordained for 10 years, at least 10 years. And finally, he or she is learned and wise, having profound knowledge of the 3 baskets of scripture. So this is what I've just mentioned, the Vinaya, the Sutra, and the Abhidhamma. Fundamental vehicle teachers should also be disillusioned with psychic existence and not seek worldly success or many possessions for themselves. They should also have the strength to endure the difficulties involved in teaching and guiding disciples. So I think I mentioned the story of my Asanga meditating to try and meet Maitreya, and then Maitreya finally, after 12 years, he made contact with Maitreya, the future Buddha. There he is. And how Maitreya taught him 5 texts that in Tushita Pure Land, then Asanga brought these texts back and wrote them out on earth. And one of them was, so Lama Yeshe was very fond of these teachings and gave commentaries on 2 of these texts. One's called Madhyartha Vibhanga and the other's called Dharma Dhammata. So those 2 Lama Yeshe gave commentaries on, Udanamche and Chöni Namche in Tibetan. So we're kind of working on these teachings at the moment. Another text was the Abhisamayalankara. It's a very important text, and it's one that is one of the main texts that you study to become a Geshe. And chapter 4 of that, I think it is included in the FPMT's basic program, the 70 topics. Abhisamayalankara. Then there's the Uttara Tantra, the Buddha text on Buddha nature, Uttara Tantra, or Gyulama. And finally, there's the Mahayana Sutra Lankara. So in the Mahayana Sutra Lankara, Asanga Maitreya described 10 qualities of the teacher for the perfection vehicle, or the Mahayana Sutra vehicle. So these are the ones that are quite commonly given. Rely on a friend who is subdued, calm, and quiet, has more virtue, is energetic, learned in scripture, has realized suchness, is endowed with eloquence, has a compassionate nature, and ignores weariness. So to present these qualities in an expanded way, a fully qualified perfection vehicle teacher, so then here then they give a list, these 10 qualities spelled out a little bit. A fully qualified perfection vehicle teacher is disciplined and subdued in his or her behavior. That's higher training in ethical conduct. Disciplined and subdued in his or her behavior. Has serenity and meditative experience. That's the higher training in concentration. And is pacified through developing wisdom. Higher training in wisdom. So these are the 3 higher trainings that are practiced by a middle capable being to attain individual liberation. So if we relate this to the 3 divisions of motivation in the Lam Rim, the path of the being the practitioner of least capability, whose motivation is simply to be reborn in the upper realms and avoid lower rebirth. Then there's the path of the practitioner of intermediate capability, which is this one, where you practice the 3 higher trainings, conduct, concentration, wisdom, in order to attain individual liberation. And then there's the path of the practitioner of greatest capability, so that's the Mahayana path. So that can be the Mahayana Sutra path, or the perfection vehicle, which is what these 10 qualities refer to, the teacher. Or there's the Vajrayana, the quick path to enlightenment, which has different qualities, which we'll come to. So the 3 higher trainings, the fundamental 3 qualities: disciplined, meditative experience, and pacified through developing wisdom. So this wisdom is realizing the ultimate nature of one's own mind, or transcending one's ego. It's this ignorance of the self, not understanding the way in which our mind exists, and believing in this real I, feeling there's a real I, a real self, a real me here. So feeling this I is self-existent, independent, permanent, not changing. So that's the false I. There's no such I. And but that's the fundamental ignorance that we've been under the influence of since beginningless time. And on that basis, we develop attachment and anger and then all the other delusions, and we create negative karma and suffering for ourselves and others. So this pacified through developing wisdom, this is the wisdom of realizing the ultimate nature of the self. So then the 4th quality is have more qualities, more knowledge than the student. So if your teacher doesn't know more than you do, then not much point studying with that teacher. Uh, 5 is enthusiastic to practice Dharma and benefit others. 6 is learned in scriptures. 7 has realized the emptiness of all phenomena, not just the emptiness of the person. So there's 2 levels of emptiness, or 2 levels of hindrance or obscuration. There are the gross obscurations, or the gross ignorance, which prevent us from, which keep us in cyclic existence, which prevent us from realizing nirvana. or individual liberation. So those are the gross delusions, disturbing negative minds. And then there are the Nyundip, they're called in Tibetan, Kleshavarana, the obscurations due to the delusions. And then there's the subtle imprints, the Nye Avarana, or Shedjip, which are obscurations to knowledge, the obscurations to knowing the ultimate nature of all other phenomena other than the self. So that those subtle obscurations are what prevent us from becoming enlightened. The gross obscurations just prevent us from attaining liberation from cyclic existence. So obviously to attain enlightenment, we have to get rid of both. So since this is the qualities of a teacher leading us to enlightenment by following the path of perfections, the 6 perfections: generosity, morality, patience, effort, concentration, wisdom. So this teacher also has to realize the emptiness of all phenomena, not just the emptiness of the person. Then the 8th quality is skillful in giving teachings, articulate and able to explain the Dharma clearly. 9 is compassionate, always wishing to benefit others. And 10 does not easily become tired or discouraged by expounding the Dharma to others. So these are these 10 qualities. So His Holiness says, it's important for a Mahayana spiritual mentor to possess the first 3 qualities, the 3 higher trainings: conduct, concentration, wisdom. Because without having disciplined and subdued one's own body, speech, and mind, subduing those of others will be difficult. Someone may be able to discipline her own mind, but without other qualities, she will not be able to adequately guide others in the methods for transforming their minds. Thus, wide knowledge and understanding of the Mahayana teachings, as expressed in the 4th, 6th, and 7th qualities, are necessary. So 4th is having more qualities than student. 6th is learned in the scriptures. And 7th is having realized the emptiness of all phenomena, not just the self. Such a teacher has discerned the exact meaning of the Buddha's teachings by employing reasoning and scriptural quotations. So, there are 3 ways of understanding or proving something is true. And that sort of goes along with the nature of phenomena. Some phenomena are kind of overt, that we can experience ourselves through our senses. So, if you have a spoonful of sugar, through your own experience, it's sweet. And no matter what anybody tells you, that's not sweet, it's sour, it's bitter, it's salty. It's not, through your own experience. So that's the best way to know whether something is true or not. So, knowing sugar is sweet is a kind of simple example. Knowing past and future lives exist through your own experience is more profound. And that can only come through developing single-pointed concentration and remembering our past lives. And if we develop enough concentration, we can also develop this extrasensory perception of clairvoyance, where we can see our future lives. So in order to develop that level of clarity of mind where we can remember previous lives and see into our future lives, that depends on practicing meditation, very intensely, in retreat. It's not something that we can develop by meditating for 15 minutes every morning, 15 minutes every evening. And along with that, we have to have very pure moral conduct. And then we have to have done a lot of purification practice, like Vajrasattva. We have to done at least 100,000 Vajrasattva mantra recitations in purification retreat, or 100,000 prostrations with the 35 Buddhas, in order to have purified our mind enough to be able to go beyond our previous bad habits that keep wanting to arise again. So the best way of knowing something's true is through personal experience. If a phenomenon is not so overt but slightly hidden, you can get at the truth through logical deduction. So it's saying such a teacher has discerned the exact meaning of Buddha's teachings by employing reasoning and scriptural quotations. So if a phenomena is slightly hidden, like where there's smoke, there's fire, you can infer there's a fire by seeing the smoke, even though you can't see the fire. So, because, the fire is out of view, but you see the smoke. So, like that. And scriptural quotation, if a phenomena is extremely subtle, very hidden, like the workings of karma, then we have to we have to depend on a reliable authority. So if we have studied the Buddha's teachings enough, and we've studied the Buddha's teachings on emptiness. Emptiness, teachings on emptiness can be analysed through logic, and to prove that phenomena are empty of inherent existence. So if we have faith in Buddha's teachings, that his teachings on emptiness are correct, then we can have faith that his teachings on conventional reality, which is less profound, although it's more difficult to see, the teachings on karma, we can give him the benefit of the doubt. And there are so many other Buddha's teachings that we can understand and prove to ourselves to be correct. So through doing that, we develop sort of conviction or understanding faith in the Buddha's teachings, and can accept that the teachings we don't understand at the moment are not understood, not because they're wrong, but because our understanding is limited. So the teacher also has broad knowledge and understanding of the path, which is necessary to lead sentient beings with a wide variety of dispositions and capabilities to awakening. So this is referring to having wide knowledge and understanding of the Mahayana teachings as expressed in the 4th, 6th, and 7th qualities. More qualities than the student, learned in the scriptures, and has realized the emptiness of all phenomena. The remaining qualities, the 5th, 8th, 9th, and 10th. So the 5th is enthusiastic to practice Dharma and benefit others. The 8th is skillful in giving teachings. 9th is compassionate. The 10th is not getting easily tired. They demonstrate a spiritual teacher wishes to benefit others and has the ability to endure the hardships of guiding them. So these 10 qualities of an excellent teacher, mentor, excellent spiritual mentor, may be abbreviated into 3. Should be learned and wise, disciplined, and have a kind heart. So that's the bottom line. Discipline should not prevent learnedness, and learnedness should not lead to the neglect of discipline. Even if he has both learning and discipline, if he lacks a kind heart, he will not be able to help others on a vast scale. If he has a kind heart but lacks learning and discipline, he will likewise be unable to lead others on the path. Thus, all 3 qualities are necessary: kind heart, learning, and discipline. Although finding teachers with 10 qualities fully developed may be difficult, it's hard to judge, try to find teachers with as many of those qualities as possible. Follow teachers who have more good qualities than negative ones, are more interested in future lives than in this life, and consider others more important than themselves. So that's important. The teacher should have more good qualities than bad qualities. They're more interested in future lives than this life, and consider others more important than themselves. The qualities of a suitable tantric master, so that was the Sutrayana master, or Paramitayana, perfection vehicle, Mahayana perfection vehicle teacher. The qualities of a suitable tantric master are explained in all 4 classes of Tantra. So there are 4 classes of Tantra: the Kriya Tantra, Charya Tantra, Yoga Tantra, and highest Yoga Tantra. So we always hear about the Lam Rim, graduated path to enlightenment. Lam Rim this, Lam Rim that, graduated path. There's also a Lam Rim, tantric Lam Rim, called the Ngad Rim Chenmo by Tsongkhapa. First 3 volumes, the first part has been translated in 3 volumes called Tantra in Tibet, Deity Yoga, and Yoga Tantra. So Jeffrey Hopkins has translated those 3 commentaries on the 3 lower classes of Tantra, Kriya Tantra, Yoga Tantra, Kriya Charya, and Yoga Tantra. And I think the highest Yoga Tantra part is being translated, but I don't think it's been done. I'm not sure who's doing it. I don't think Jeffrey Hopkins is doing it. So this person, suitable tantric master, should have the qualities of perfection vehicle mentor and have received empowerment into Vajrayana. So should have these 10 qualities as well as further ones. In addition to keeping tantric precepts and commitments purely, he or she should have studied the practices well, completed the appropriate retreats and the concluding fire puja, and experienced some deep insight through this path. In the case of a highest Yoga Tantra guru, the person should optimally have some stability in, if not realization of, the completion stage. So in highest Yoga Tantra, there are these 2 stages: the generation stage, where we generate ourselves the deity and we visual and the mandala, and then the completion stage, where we do these advanced practices with the winds and drops and channels. Otherwise, seek a person who has stability in the generation stage practice. However, if they do not have the correct understanding of emptiness, their practice is lacking. So for a tantric guru, the determination to be free from samsara and an understanding of emptiness, so renunciation and the right view of emptiness that is complemented by bodhicitta, is presupposed. So for us, if we want to practice Tantra, then the minimal requirement is a clear understanding of the three principal aspects of the path, of the sutra part of the Lam Rim, renunciation, bodhicitta, and right view of emptiness. Or, the three paths, the path of the lower capable being, the path of the middle capable being, the path of the great capable being, as Lama Zopa Rinpoche explains them. Hang on a sec. So ideally, the ideal qualifications for someone wanting to practice is not just intellectual understanding of the Lam Rim, but actual experience or realization of, the perfect human rebirth, refuge, karma, some clear understanding of emptiness, if not a complete realization, some strong bodhicitta, strong feeling of compassion. Because, the reason the Buddha taught the quick path to enlightenment was that some Mahayana practitioners couldn't bear to wait the three countless great eons it takes to achieve enlightenment by following the Paramitayana path, the path of the perfections. They had such unbearable compassion that they wanted to reach enlightenment as quickly as possible to be able to benefit all sentient beings as quickly as possible. So to practice Tantra, we really need to have very strong compassion and really care more about the happiness of others than ourselves. Clearly, not everyone who recites tantric sadhanas or methods of accomplishment is qualified to give empowerments and tantric instructions. In the 50 verses of relying on a spiritual master, so that's 50 verses of Guru devotion. This is Lama Tsongkhapa's commentary on it, and we sent out links before to Mary did. To Geshe Dage's commentaries, the short and the long commentaries on our website, lamayeshe.com. So His Holiness is referring to that teaching here. Ashvaghosha describes the qualities of the Vajra Master in full. These will be explained in a later volume on Tantra. Well, there'll be a few years before that comes, so we'll be able to jump straight to Ashvaghosha. But before we do not be too quick to regard a person as your spiritual mentor. Rather, for however long it takes, 2 years, 5 years or longer, regard this person as a spiritual friend. In the meantime, examine his or her behavior, attitudes, and ways of teaching until you are confident of his or her integrity and ability to guide you. In certain situations, a Dharma connection is automatically formed, and after that, you should regard that person as one of your spiritual mentors. So you can have many, many gurus, Atisha had 158, I think 158, something like that. So, and he had said that, I've had 158 teachers, and I regard them all as fully enlightened Buddhas. But when I bring to mind my main teacher, Dharma Rakshita, he was the one who, his body teacher and bodhicitta, the one that Atisha made a dangerous journey across the Bay of Bengal to study with him in Sumatra. When I remember Serlingpa, my bodhicitta teacher, my hair stands on end, tears come to my eye, and he always prostrated above the crown of his head like that, just whenever he thought of his teacher Serlingpa or heard his name. So even though he regarded all his 158 teachers, his root guru, the one that most deeply affected his mind, he had paid even special respect to him. In certain situations, a Dharma connection is automatically formed. After that, you should regard that person as one of your spiritual mentor. A person who gives you refuge, or the 5 lay precepts or monastic precepts, becomes one of your Vinaya teachers, your discipline teachers. Those from whom you receive bodhisattva ethical restraints, bodhisattva vows, it becomes those from whom you receive bodhisattva vows become your perfection vehicle teachers. And someone who gives you an empowerment, tantric transmission, or tantric commentary becomes one of your Vajrayana teachers. So if you receive refuge and vows, you automatically have to regard that teacher as a guru. If you receive bodhisattva vows, you automatically regard that teacher as a guru. And a Vajrayana teacher, if you receive an empowerment, you have to regard that teacher as a Vajra guru. Now, Rinpoche said once that, well, more than once, that there are different obligations to following these 3 levels of teacher. If you're following the, what they call here, fundamental vehicle, Hinayana, your teacher who guides you in meditation or gives you precepts you're regarded as sort of as a Dharma friend, but your main guru, if I can put it that way, are the vows that you've taken. So if your teacher tells you to do something that you think would cause you to break one of your pratimoksha vows, your individual liberation vows, and practitioners of this level of path are very, very strict in following their vows, more or less to the letter. If your teacher tells you something that you think will cause you to transgress one of your Vinaya precepts, then you don't have to do what the teacher says. That what the vow says takes precedence. With the Mahayana teacher, with the perfection vehicle teacher, if the teacher tells you to do something that you think sounds a bit incorrect or you're not sure about, you think may be wrong, then you can ask politely, you explain your understanding and say, is that really what I should do? So you can question it 2 or 3 times politely. You don't say, what the hell are you talking about? You can just, and if the teacher says, yes, that's correct, you definitely should do this, then you should do it. With the Vajrayana, if your teacher tells you to do something, you do it without question, without hesitation. So it's important to pick the right teacher or teachers, whatever level of practice that you're doing, but it's especially important to not make a mistake with a Vajrayana teacher if the commitment there is whatever the teacher says, you do it without questioning. So if you read the life stories of Milarepa or Naropa, so Naropa was put through incredible trials and tribulations by his guru, Tilopa, in order to purify his arrogant academic mind. He was a big scholar. He was very proud of his scholarship, Naropa, apparently. So the story goes that he was in the library looking at books, and a Dakini, like a tantric goddess, appeared to him and said, "You know the words, but you don't know the meaning." He was like, "Huh?" And so she said again, "You know the words, but you don't know the meaning." So he says, well, how do I find out the meaning? She says, "Go and find your guru, Tilopa." So that set him off looking for his guru, who he eventually found. And anyway, long story there. And then I think there are 12 impossible deeds that Tilopa made Naropa do. They treated him very harshly. But because Naropa followed his guru's advice unquestioningly and did what he was told to do immediately, then he did incredible purification. I think there's a story that I'm not sure if it's, I think it's Naropa. There's Naropa came into Tilopa's room, his guru's room one time, and Naropa manifested the mandala of Chakrasamvara, Haruka Chakrasamvara. This mandala appeared, and Tilopa said to Naropa, "Who are you going to prostrate to first, the deity or your guru?" So Naropa thought, well, I see my guru every day. I very rarely see the mandala of Haruka. So he prostrated to the mandala. And so Tilopa was like, wrong. Then he said, without the guru, there is no deity. So, and actually, it reminds me, in 1976, we had this little monastic community, Western monks and nuns. About 15 of us at that time. We were living at Kopan, doing a daily schedule. We had Lama Yeshe gave us our own section of the monastery and our own kitchen, and we did our, pathetic Western imitation of trying to be Tibetan monks and nuns. But, as Lama would say, they means well. So we meant well, but it was probably pretty amateurish. The Tibetan monks, they memorize hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of pages of texts. And we were, at one point, we were studying Abhidharma Kosha with Geshe Jumpa Gyatso, and we wanted us to memorize a few verses. And so, I'd memorized the first verse, and then by the time I memorized the second verse, I'd forgotten the first one. It was kind of like that. Anyway, so Yeah. So we had this thing. Then the Nepalese government changed the visa laws for foreigners. That you could only stay for 3 months, and each month you had to change $150 in the bank. And if you want to renew your visa for another month, you had to show the bank receipt. So they would stop people changing money on the black market, which we all did because you get a much better rate. So we went to the home, some of us, we sent these delegations to the home minister trying to get an exemption because we were serious students. You could get a visa to study at the university. So we wanted to be able to get a visa to study at the monastery, but they weren't entertaining that at all. So eventually we had to leave. We had to go to Dharamsala. So huge, long story, but we finally found a place where we could stay in Dharamsala, about 12 of us. We fixed up these broken down servants' quarters of an old estate. And so I'd been given 2 retreats to do. One was Mahakala Retreat. Lama Yeshe gave us a Mahakala Retreat. Lama Yeshe made a little practice for the Western monks and nuns, 4-arm Mahakala practice that we did every evening. And we were supposed to do a 2-week retreat. So I had that one. And there was Lama Tsongkhapa Guru Yoga Retreat. So I didn't know which one to do first. I thought, well, maybe I should do the short one just to get that out of the way. I went to see His Holiness Trijang Rinpoche, His Holiness Junior Tutor, and I told him I had these 2 retreats to do. And he looked at me as if I was crazy, said, oh, Guru always comes first. So I finished up doing the Lama Tsongkhapa Guru Yoga Retreat, which took 6 weeks. And then I didn't have time to do the 2-week retreat on Mahakala. I still have that hanging over my head. So I don't know if I'll ever do it or not. But so the Guru comes first. So Naropa prostrated to the deity instead of his Guru. And I think the story is that because of that mistake, he wasn't able to reach enlightenment in his lifetime, but he reached enlightenment after he passed away in the intermediate state, which apparently is a thing. You can reach enlightenment in the intermediate state, in the bardo, if you don't quite make it in this life. So if your fundamental vehicle, your Theravada, your Hinayana teacher tells you to do something that you think transgresses the vows, you don't have to do it. If your Mahayana Sutra teacher tells you to do something that you think is a bit off, you can question it 2 or 3 times. If he still insists, then you should do it. If your Vajra master tells you to do something, you do it without question. So Tilopa gave Naropa all his difficult things to do, which he executed faithfully, but because of that one mistake, he didn't reach enlightenment in his lifetime. Then Milarepa was given all kinds of difficult tasks to do by his guru Mapa, which he did. And he had a lot of stuff to purify, even from that life. And he actually received enlightenment in his lifetime. So if you read their life stories, you can see how these great masters underwent incredible hardships given to them by their guru. So, Lama Zopa Rinpoche says that if we were treated by our gurus the way those practitioners were treated by their gurus, we'd be hauling our gurus off to court. We'd be suing them for abuse. emotional abuse or some kind of abuse, physical abuse. The story was, the expression was, the scolding. If you're scolding by your guru, is like receiving an oral transmission. A beating by your guru is like receiving an initiation. So if you have the right attitude, if the guru beats you, then it's a blessing and an initiation. But if don't see it like that, if you see it as abuse and haul the guru off to court, then I'm not sure what the karmic result of that is, but it's probably not to receive enlightenment anyway. Okay, so in the 50 verses of Guru Devotion, hang on a sec. So in 50 verses of Guru Devotion, verse 6 says, in order for the words of honor of neither guru nor disciple to degenerate, that's the mutual commitment made, there must be a mutual examination beforehand to determine if each can brave a guru-disciple relationship. So this is now from a Vajrayana point of view. I can't find the quote, I'll find it. But the subtitle of this book, The Heart of the Path, is seeing the guru as Buddha. So that's the practice of guru devotion in Tantra. And people feel that this teaching being given to beginners can be dangerous because, if a person isn't familiar with the path in some detail, then they can be misled if they've made a mistake in choosing their teacher. So you find it, and His Holiness says that these days, there are teachers who Tibetan teachers who want to go to the West and have gone to the West in order to have a lot of disciples, to have sex, to receive a lot of money offerings, completely wrong motivation. And if the students are beginner students and they think the guru is the Buddha and they encounter one of these charlatans, then they're in trouble, And we've seen that happen over the decades, and it happened in Tibet. One of the reasons that King the Dharma King Lama Yeshe wanted to invite Atisha to Tibet back, 1,000 years ago, was because the Dharma flourished in Tibet for 200 or 300 years after it was introduced. But then an anti-Dharma king called Langdharma came to power, and he tried to get rid of Buddhism and restore the pre-Buddhist religion of Bon to Tibet. So he destroyed a lot of monasteries and libraries and monks, and he drove Buddhism out to the far edges of Tibet, to the east and west. And this king in Western, and then he was assassinated by a monk. And so that left this vacuum. So then all these false teachers started coming to Tibet from Nepal and India to take advantage of the Tibetan people who'd kind of lost the plot and didn't really know what pure Dharma was. So this Dharma king in far western Tibet, the kingdom of Guge, he saw what was happening, and the Tibetans didn't understand the way that Sutra and Tantra worked together, and there were some teachers teaching if you practice Sutra, you couldn't practice Tantra, and if you practice Tantra, you didn't need to practice Sutra, and then they were coming to take advantage of the Tibetan people and get wealthy and so on. So he invited Atisha to Tibet to re-establish the pure Dharma back in Tibet. So then another long story, Atisha came to Tibet, and then he finished up writing this short text, the Lamp for the Path to Enlightenment, which was the first Lamrim, became the first Lamrim text. So, if immature beginner students hear this teaching that the Guru is Buddha, and they run into the wrong teacher, and they don't know how to check a teacher, or they rush into the relationship, then they can get into trouble. As we see, many students have gotten into trouble, and many teachers have gotten into trouble. So they need to check each other. So Geshe Dagi says in his commentary, we should try to examine a spiritual teacher before beginning a guru-disciple relationship with him. Similarly, a guru should examine a student before accepting him or her as a disciple. This is very important right from the start. Before cultivating such an intimate relationship, both should check each other very carefully, because if once established, this relationship is broken, it is a transgression of samaya, sacred words of honor. Bad for both guru and disciple. However, once we've accepted a teacher as our Vajra Guru, we shouldn't continue examining him. That is to be done before accepting him as a guru. And once we've done so, we should only regard our guru as an enlightened being. Further examination can only lead us to the Vajra hell. Jetsun Milarepa said, when we are with our Vajra Guru, we shouldn't seek out his faults. We should cultivate a proper outlook and regard him as a perfect being. If we are successful in this, we will be successful in our practice. If we want to practice properly, we must cultivate proper Guru devotion. Without it, despite diligent practice, we won't achieve anything worthwhile. One great practitioner said, no matter how much you try to seclude yourself in an isolated area, if you regard the Buddhas and your gurus as enemies, your practice will be of no value because it will lack the root of substantial achievement. Guru devotion is essential for success in practice. Certain sutras recommend that examination go on for as long as 12 years if necessary. It is very important that such examination be done properly. When both guru and disciple are satisfied, the relationship can be established. If the guru-disciple relationship is established without proper examination from either side, the sacred words of honor are in danger of degeneration. Therefore, we have to be very careful in this. So then the next verse is the character of person to be avoided. A disciple with sense should not accept as a guru someone who lacks compassion or is prone to anger, vicious, arrogant, possessive, undisciplined, or boastful of his knowledge. So Geshe Nawandage's commentary to this verse explains the kind of guru we should not cultivate. It mentions some disqualifications. An intelligent disciple should not cultivate such a guru. He should possess great compassion, the wish that sentient beings be free from suffering and its cause. This is the most important qualification. If our guru is not compassionate, there's the danger that he'll give up on us at the first sign of bad behavior. If he has great compassion, then no matter how offensive our actions, he won't forsake or neglect us. Therefore, it's very important that our guru have great compassion. As stated in the great commentary on Lama Chöpa by Kachan Yeshe Gelsen, so he was a great teacher, Kachan Yeshe Gelsen. He was the tutor of the 8th Dalai Lama. And he had a monastery just outside Lhasa called Sechenling, and that was re-established in Dharamsala. Kachan Yeshe Gelsen. And he wrote some important texts. However, the mischievous child offends his parents and misbehaves and worries them, they won't lose love and compassion and would continue to value their child. Although I, a vulgar rascal, don't deserve your compassion, please don't forsake me and guide me as parents guide their child. So the teacher should possess great compassion. He shouldn't be prone to anger. He shouldn't be sadistic or hold a grudge. He shouldn't be arrogant. He shouldn't have a strong desire for possessions or wealth or cling strongly to material things. He should not be loose of character of body, speech, and mind, or careless in his practice of morality. If the guru gambles and takes intoxicants, his disciples will follow the same path. We should try not to fall under the influence of such a guru. If possible, our guru should be like Natso Lotso was. He lived with Atisha for 19 years, during which time he couldn't see the tiniest stain or fault in him. We should try to cultivate a guru like that. One in whom we can't find even a single shortcoming. Similarly, Kedrup Rinpoche offered praise to Lama Tsongkhapa. No matter how the Buddhas, with all their wisdom, try to see if you have breached any of your vows, even a minor downfall, they won't be able to find a single one. This emphasizes that we should choose a guru who keeps his vows properly. He should not boast of his abilities or be fond of revealing his qualifications all the time. So then the 8th verse reiterates these 10 qualities. From the Mahayana Sutra Lamkara. The guru should be stable in his actions, cultivated in his speech, wise, patient, and honest. Okay, so this is a little different. It's not quite these 10, sorry. It overlaps. He should neither conceal his shortcomings nor pretend to possess qualities he lacks. He should be an expert in the meanings of Tantra and its ritual procedures of medicine and turning back obstacles. He should also have loving compassion and a complete knowledge of the scriptures. So this verse explains the kind of guru we should cultivate. It mentions some of the qualifications we should look for in a guru, the characteristics of the kind guru who should be cultivated by an intelligent disciple. So stable means that he should have, so it says he all the time, you know, most gurus back then and even now are male. So as I mentioned last time, you can say he or she, which is a little clumsy. We can use the singular they, which is, you know, for old people like me, that's great. Or we can alternate he and she, which seems a little precious. So I don't know. So if the guru is female and you read he, think she. Stable means that he should have very subdued actions of body. He should abstain from non-virtuous actions of body, keep his bodily actions proper and moral, immutable. So very subdued actions of body. Cultivated refers to his speech. He should abstain from non-virtuous actions of speech, keep proper morality of speech, not hurt others by means of speech, sharp words, etc. Mentally, he should abstain from the 3 non-virtuous actions of mind. That's covetousness, ill will, and wrong views, as well as from pretentiousness. His mental attitude should be very pure. He should possess intelligence and discretion. If he doesn't, he can't lead us on the path to liberation. He should possess 3 types of forbearance or patience. Forbearance of harm received from others, the ability to endure hardships, and the ability to hear profound teachings without being terrified. He should be true and unbiased or impartial, not biased towards near relatives or repulsed by enemies. He should be even-minded towards all sentient beings. He shouldn't be pretentious or conceal his shortcomings. Pretentious means pretending to have supernatural knowledge that he doesn't have. And concealing his shortcomings means always trying to hide his faults from others, especially the intention of getting offerings. He should have the power to drive out interferences by means of mantra and tantric practice. He should be able to practice medicine, which actually means to help and benefit others by means of his teachings, you know, to really pacify them. He should possess great compassion, the wish that all sentient beings' sufferings be alleviated, and he should have profound knowledge of the scriptures, especially the Tripitaka, the 3 baskets, Vinaya Sutra and Abhidhamma Pitaka. So then it goes on to give details of qualities of a Vajraguru. So we might look at that next week. Okay, so I think I might stop there for today. Anyone have any questions? Okay, that clear, eh? Okay. So we started by generating bodhicitta twice, and we've been studying His Holiness's teachings and other references on guru practice. So no question, we've created a lot of merit. So we need to dedicate that merit to protect it from destruction by anger and wrong views. So I think, because of this merit, so just, bring to mind all this merit we've just piled up. Because of this merit, may I quickly reach enlightenment in order to enlighten all sentient beings. Okay. Thank you for giving me the opportunity. And any housekeeping? Mary?
Dr. Nick, I'm trying to pull up the prayers for the dedication prayers, but like I said earlier, my computer, I cannot pull them up right now.
That's okay. We just did it. We did the main thing. The prayers are reminders to think of the meaning. So if we go straight to the meaning, then in a way we don't need the prayers. Although, they have some kind of, because those prayers have been said by so many highly realized beings for so many centuries, that by also reciting those prayers, we make a connection, however tenuous, with those previous practitioners. But the main thing is to think of the meaning, when we take refuge, when we generate bodhicitta, when we dedicate the merit, think what it means.